I'm back with Shadi Hamid, Senior Fellow at Brookings, author of the book, The Problem of Democracy. By the way, you can follow him at Twitter, at Shadi Hamid, Shadihamid. Shadi, you were making a point at the end of the last segment where you were saying that societies can come to a point where the population is sharply divided, as we seem to be now. And unlike the old days, the days of Truman and Bush and Reagan, where it appeared that people shared goals but disagreed on means, there now seems to be a divergence on goals. And so that a win for one side is seen as a loss for the other. It's not just a disagreement about how to make America more prosperous. It seems like the two sides want to go in completely different directions, and one side's utopia is the other side's nightmare, and vice versa. Let's talk about how you think that dispute can be adjudicated through the democratic process, because in my view, this is not a one-sided problem where the Trumpsters reject democracy, as we hear in the public rhetoric. I think it's fair to say that if you probe either side, that they seem to be really afraid that democracy that delivers to the other team is somehow lethal for their values and their way of life.
Exactly. And, if we just backtrack a little bit, I think that Republicans were right in 2017 that Democrats overreached when Trump won, and they began delegitimizing Trump almost right from the start. And that, I think, set a bad tone. That said, I am on the left side of the spectrum, and the way that I saw Republicans reacting to Biden's victory in 2020, in my view, was an escalation. It was in many ways, including, I would say, January 6th, the riot or insurrection, it was worse. So I think that, yes, both sides have a lot to work on. My goal, because I speak mostly to left of center audiences, is to tell my own side, hey, liberals, hey, Democrats, let's be careful here. Let's make sure we stay committed to the democratic idea. And I don't want Trump to win. That would be scary for me if he wins in 2024. But if he does and he wins fair and square, we have to respect that. Now, my critics sometimes say, well, Shadi, you're extending the benefit of the doubt to Republicans. But Republicans, a lot of them support election denial conspiracies. And I think the polling here troubles me. And I'd be curious, Dinesh, what you think about this. But I looked back the other day, and only 20% of Republicans, according to various polls, consider Biden to be legitimately elected. A majority of Republicans consider January 6th to be a quote unquote legitimate protest. That to me is scary, right? So then the question is, what do we do? And I hope that every Republican who's listening now, and the few liberals maybe who listen to your show, Dinesh, that they look to their own side, because that's all we can do, right? That's who we can persuade. That's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I want to do. Yeah,
Shadi, you have been doing very important work and the courage of talking to your own side is something that you have been displaying and carrying out, and I want to commend you for it. Let me push back on you a little bit in a friendly way and say this. Number one, historically, the Democrats have been the party of voter fraud. I mean, going back to the 19th century, Tammany Hall tried to steal this 1864 election from Lincoln, Democratic voter suppression in the South, the blacks. So there's a history there. The Kennedy race with Nixon, which could have been stolen in Illinois. Number two, Democrats have challenged a number of recent elections, right? 2000, 2004, 2016, you mentioned with Trump. To my knowledge, and all the time I've been in the United States since 1978, I have never heard Republicans challenge a single election. Republicans typically are the people who go along, whoops, we lost this time, better luck next time. 2020 in that sense is a complete anomaly. So whether or not you think they're right, I want to emphasize that these are Republicans who sincerely believe that the same animus that drove the left against Trump in 2016, the refusal to accept a legitimate outcome, pushed into a corruption of the 2020 election. Now, that's a factual dispute, which we're not going to adjudicate today. But why is a factual dispute of that sort somehow out of bounds in democratic politics? In other words, I think everyone who would say that Biden is not legitimately elected would agree that A, he is the president, right? They're not saying that Biden's not my president. They're not saying that Biden doesn't have legal authority to do what he's saying. They're merely saying that as a matter of fact, we think something went deeply wrong in the 2020 election and we still don't have the full story. Why do those people have to somehow come around to your point of view in order for democratic solidarity to be affirmed?
Yeah, well, so I do think there's a difference in the sense that Obama didn't try to block the transition to Trump's presidency in 2016. Hillary Clinton said some bad stuff, but she did actually concede almost immediately to Donald Trump, where I think in 2020, Trump and many of his supporters were not willing to, did not concede, but also did try to overturn the election through decertification. And we don't have to go into the debate around that. I just do think there is a qualitative difference. Now, I think that this is important because if Republicans didn't like what Democrats did in 2016 with Trump, they should be more willing to apply that same principle to their own side. They should say, well, we know what it feels like to be delegitimized. So we're not going to do that to Biden or the Democrats, however much we dislike them or hate them. So it does require a kind of, we have to go high when they go low. And that's hard in a very tense political situation because everyone feels like the other is out to get them. So I do think there has to be a kind of presumptive generosity. And that's why whenever I talk to Republicans and make an effort to hear what they have to say, I'm trying to go out of my way to do that because what's the other option? We have to live together. But my concern is that, as you said, yes, 2020 in some ways was an anomaly, but my fear is that this is a new precedent that's being set on the Republican side, that in 2024, we're going to see an intensification of these efforts if Biden or another Democrat wins. We'll have to wait and see, but that's going to be a real test. I mean, what if a Democrat wins in 2024? Are we going to see something similar to January 6th? Are we going to see efforts to decertify results on the local or state level?
Yeah, I'd like to have you back with your permission some other time, and we should pursue this further because I do think that there is, on the Republican side, a belief that when the Democrats come in, basic liberties that have been taken for granted, I'm thinking here of free speech, equality of rights under the law, not using the police agencies of government against your political opponents, that these things are now being deployed in the name of fighting election denialism. And so the net effect of it is to create not a de-escalation of the kind you recommend, but a further escalation. And the paradox for Republicans is Republicans say, listen, you get to pack the court, but we're not going to pack the court. You get to shut down our free speech, but when we come in, we're going to let you talk. You get to use the FBI against us and the IRS, but when we come in, we're not going to do it against you. How do you reach that point where both sides are respectful of each other's liberties if you don't escalate in this peculiar situation? So we're not going to resolve that today. I just posed the question. With your permission, we'll circle back to you and see if we can have round two to pursue this. But I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you for joining me, Shadi. People, you got to check out this book, The Problem of Democracy, Shadi Hamid. Follow him on Twitter at Shadi Hamid. Shadi, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Dinesh.